Marcus Calder had never been thrilled by the idea of a routine mission. As far as he was concerned, routine was just another word for watch your back for a surprise explosion. This particular mission wasn't any different. Find the missing Princess Lyra of Zelian 9, bring her back to the Queen, and go home to a nice cold beer. Simple. Even if it did involve navigating a jungle full of unpredictable wildlife and ancient ruins that no one quite understood. The planet itself was a strange mix. Technologically advanced but littered with artifacts from an ancient, nearly forgotten civilization. According to the intel from the Queen's military advisors, Princess Lyra had been on some sort of diplomatic expedition when she vanished without a trace. No distress signal, no emergency communication, just a ghost in the wind. To Marcus, that meant one thing. Either she didn't want to be found, or someone didn't want her to be. So, what's the game plan today? Juno's voice crackled in his earpiece. The AI was a constant companion, sarcastic and unnervingly accurate in its predictions. Look for signs of her, avoid getting eaten by anything, and make it back alive. That sound good, Marcus replied, checking the status on his wrist pad, which flickered with a map of the terrain ahead. He had been trekking for hours, surrounded by towering trees with leaves that shimmered like iridescent glass, their bark glowing faintly in the dim light. Right, easy as pie. Maybe you'll find a new pet while you're at it. Something big and toothy would suit your personality perfectly. Marcus snorted, pushing through a thick undergrowth. I'm starting to think you're right. This place would make a perfect zoo. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, the strange hum of alien technology filled the air, like an old song that no one could quite remember the words to. The trees, each taller than any Earth flora, had a way of making everything feel smaller, more insignificant. They were designed for a world where nothing truly knew its place. Nothing, not even Marcus. His boots crunched along the ground, kicking up a soft mist that rose to his knees. Juno's voice interrupted the eerie stillness. Looks like you're closing in on something. A structure of some kind, just ahead. It's got that, we're trying to hide something ancient vibe. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his pace quickening. Let's see what it is then. Within minutes, the jungle parted to reveal a massive stone structure, half swallowed by the wilds of Zelian 9. It looked like something straight out of a myth. Carved columns, intricate designs that spiraled upwards, and an entrance dark as a tomb. As he stepped closer, the air around him seemed to pulse with a low vibration, almost as if the structure was alive in some ancient, dormant way. Creepy place, Marcus muttered to himself. Hope this isn't some sort of intergalactic shrine to bad decisions. He activated his wrist pad again, scanning the area for signs of recent activity. There was something about the way the door seemed to beckon, its edges worn but not abandoned, almost as if it had been waiting. Whatever's in there, it's definitely got secrets, Juno remarked, the sarcasm making her virtual voice sound like she was rolling her eyes. I don't think we're here to dig up old ghosts, Marcus said, stepping forward, his hand resting on the cool stone. As soon as his fingers brushed it, the door shuddered and slowly opened, revealing a darkened corridor that led deep into the heart of the ruin. You know, Juno said, her voice taking on an almost gleeful tone, I bet this is where the princess is hiding, right in the middle of a booby-trapped labyrinth full of angry statues. Marcus wasn't in the mood for Juno's brand of humor, but the thought of a labyrinth full of traps did make his pulse quicken. He wasn't exactly trained for ancient puzzle solving. He was more of a find the target, bring them back, avoid being killed kind of guy. But when duty called, you didn't turn your back on it. And this mission had suddenly become a lot more interesting than he'd expected. Just keep the sarcasm to a minimum, Juno, Marcus muttered, stepping into the corridor, the walls closing in on him. His boots echoed as they reverberated through the empty halls. The place smelled of old, ancient dust, the kind of scent that couldn't be replicated in a lab. Fine, but when you find a giant stone face that talks to you, I'll be waiting to say, I told you so. The further Marcus walked into the structure, the more unnerving it became. There was no sign of life, no footprints, no evidence that anyone had been here recently. And yet something was off. The place had an eerie stillness, almost like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He rounded a corner and froze. At the end of the hallway stood a figure, tall, poised, and unmistakably regal. A woman with silver hair that shimmered like moonlight, her ears long and elegantly pointed, reminiscent of an old-world elf from the myths. She wore an ancient-looking gown, tattered but somehow still magnificent. Her eyes met his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Are you looking for someone, soldier?" Her voice was soft, like the whisper of wind through trees, but there was a hidden command in it that made Marcus instinctively stand straighter. He blinked, taken aback by her presence. "Princess Lyra?" The woman smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "So, you've heard of me. Good. That will make things simpler." Her voice was tinged with something he couldn't quite place. It wasn't arrogance, but it wasn't humility either. It was something older, something wiser than any human Marcus had met before. Marcus could only nod, still caught off guard by the situation. The princess, the missing royal, stood before him, but she didn't seem anything like the image of a delicate, lost princess he had imagined. Instead, she had the air of someone who was used to being in control, used to making decisions that affected entire civilizations. "So, I take it you're not here to drag me back to my dear mother?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Marcus shook his head, slowly regaining his composure. "I was sent to find you, yes, but I wasn't expecting this." He gestured to the vast ruins surrounding them, feeling like an idiot in comparison to her poised, ancient presence. The princess tilted her head, considering him. "I can imagine. Most aren't prepared for the reality of Zelian 9. Her eyes sparkled with something that could have been amusement. "But tell me, soldier, what is it you really want?" Marcus frowned. "I want to know why you're out here. What happened to you?" She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "What happened to me," she said softly, "is that I'm no longer part of that royal charade. I came here because I needed answers. And perhaps, so did you." Before Marcus could respond, a sudden movement in the shadows made him stiffen. He wasn't alone anymore. Marcus instinctively reached for his blaster, his muscles tensing, but Lyra's voice cut through the stillness before he could make a move. "Relax, soldier," she said, her tone light and almost teasing, as if this were just another conversation over tea. "You're not about to be eaten by an angry statue. At least not yet." Marcus didn't lower his weapon, but his eyes scanned the darkness. The sound of movement came from all around them, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the walls themselves were closing in. The flickering light from his wrist pad cast strange shadows, making the air feel heavier, more oppressive. Lyra stepped forward, her presence almost ethereal in the gloom. She didn't seem afraid, and that only made Marcus more uneasy. How was she so calm? Who was she really? A missing royal? Or something else entirely? "Who's there?" Marcus called out, his voice a bit sharper than he intended. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, lean, and cloaked in a ragged mix of technology and old-world fabrics. The stranger's face was obscured by a hood, but their eyes, dark and intense, glinted with a knowledge that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. The stranger raised one hand in a peaceful gesture. "I mean no harm." "Oh, good, because if you had any plans to harm me, I might have just accidentally shot you," Marcus quipped, the humor forced but necessary. His grip on the blaster tightened anyway. Lyra gave him a quick glance, amusement flickering across her features. "You should be careful with that. The last person who shot someone in these ruins, well, let's just say they didn't make it to their second lunch." Marcus's brow furrowed. "I'm not sure that's the most reassuring thing you could have said." The stranger chuckled, and in a surprising move, pulled back their hood. The face beneath was scarred, with skin that looked almost too smooth, like it had been altered, modified by some advanced technology. The stranger's lips twisted into a grin, though it seemed a little more cynical than kind. "You're a little jumpy for a soldier, aren't you?" the stranger said, his voice deep but with an edge of amusement. "I'm starting to think I've signed up for the wrong kind of vacation," Marcus muttered, lowering his blaster but not letting go of it. Lyra crossed her arms, watching the interaction with a strange mix of amusement and contemplation. That's Hyrex. I'm guessing your soldiers weren't briefed on the local population? Marcus gave her a confused look. I thought the only inhabitants here were the locals who built the ruins. Lyra shook her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. The Zellian 9 natives? Oh, they were a long time ago. Hyrex here is a member of the last known descendants of the Solarian people. They're, well, it's complicated. Hyrex chuckled again, as if hearing this all for the first time. Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it, Princess. Marcus still didn't understand, but he wasn't about to ask for a history lesson right now. So, what is this? Some sort of mysterious stranger who's not quite what he seems situation? Lyra's lips twitched into a smile. You could say that. Hyrex has been helping me with my little quest. Helping? Marcus shot her a skeptical glance. You're not exactly the type to ask for help, Princess. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not? I seem to remember someone handing me a blaster earlier, thinking I might need it. Point taken, Marcus said, lowering his hands from the weapon. He still didn't trust the situation, but there was no point in antagonizing the stranger, at least not yet. Hyrex's eyes flicked between them both, studying Marcus. You're the soldier from the Queen's military, aren't you? The one looking for the princess? Funny how things turn out. You were probably expecting a helpless royal, right? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He didn't exactly see himself as the type to expect anything from anyone, least of all royalty. But the question lingered in his mind. Had he expected some delicate princess locked away in a tower? Or had he expected her to be exactly like this? Cool, calm, and in command of a situation that didn't make sense. I wasn't expecting anything, Marcus finally said, trying to keep his tone neutral. But I'm getting used to surprises, and you're a big one. Hyrex nodded, then turned his attention to the walls around them. Well, you're not the only one who's been surprised. These ruins, they weren't meant to be found. Marcus's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Lyra stepped forward, her eyes darkening as she stared at the ancient symbols on the walls. These ruins hold a secret, a power long forgotten by the galaxy. And it's not just some artifact waiting for a nice tourist to pick it up. It's dangerous. If it falls into the wrong hands... Like your mother's, Marcus muttered, remembering the Queen's cold demeanor. He wasn't sure he trusted the woman back home, but there was something about Lyra that made him believe she was telling the truth. Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. If you think my mother would have any interest in saving the galaxy, you're mistaken. There was a pause. Even Hyrex, who had been calm and collected up until now, seemed to stiffen at the remark. Marcus wasn't sure what to make of it. So what exactly is it you're after? Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, something vulnerable flickered behind her gaze. I'm looking for a way to reconnect with my people, the Solarians, my ancestors. I've been alone for too long, Marcus. There's something here, something I need to find. Which is where we come in, right? Hyrex asked, his voice laced with a hint of skepticism. You've got the soldier, I've got the tech, and together we'll unravel an ancient secret. Marcus couldn't help but smile. The way Hyrex put it made it sound like a bad action movie. Let me guess, we'll have to dodge ancient traps, fight off rival factions, and somehow make it out of here alive? Lyra chuckled, her eyes narrowing. Pretty much. Great. Just what I needed, Marcus said, shaking his head. Let's get this over with. Hyrex clapped him on the shoulder, his smile stretching wide. Don't worry, soldier. You're in good hands. At least, we're not boring. I'm beginning to question that, Marcus muttered under his breath as he followed them deeper into the ruins, his mind racing with more questions than answers. Marcus had never been a fan of ancient prophecies. They always seemed to have too many vague statements about fate and destiny, none of which ever seemed to match his understanding of the world. But here he was, standing in the heart of a long-forgotten chamber deep beneath Sellian 9, with the Princess Lyra, Hyrex, and a holographic projection of what was very clearly an ancient Solarian queen. It wasn't exactly the adventure he'd imagined when he signed up for the military. The walls around them hummed with a low, ancient energy. Symbols glowed faintly on the stones, shifting in patterns that didn't quite make sense to him. The air felt charged, electric in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Lyra was standing in front of the central console, her fingers hovering over the strange, glowing controls. She seemed calm, almost too calm considering the situation. They had only moments before the entire complex would self-destruct, and every second that ticked by made Marcus feel like they were one wrong move away from becoming cosmic dust. "You sure this is going to work?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking the silence as he glanced nervously at the timer ticking down on his wristpad. Lyra glanced over her shoulder at him, her silver eyes gleaming. "You doubt me, soldier?" Marcus couldn't help but grin. "No more than I doubt the wisdom of following you into the unknown." Hyrex chuckled from the corner, adjusting a strange piece of technology, a portable interface module, that he'd been using to decipher the ruined security systems. "Seems like a perfect plan, doesn't it? Princess, soldier, and a disgruntled, underpaid tech guy. What could go wrong?" Lyra shot him a dry look, but didn't comment. Marcus, on the other hand, leaned against the wall, trying to look casual. Inside, he felt the weight of the situation pressing in. This was the moment when everything would change, when they either cracked the mystery of the ruins or got blown to pieces. Either way, they'd find out who or what had been hiding here all these years. The hologram flickered again, this time showing the face of a woman who looked almost identical to Lyra, only her features were older, more regal. She was surrounded by symbols Marcus couldn't begin to comprehend, her hands stretched out as if beckoning them forward. "You're the last one," the hologram intoned, its voice deep and resonant, echoing off the stone walls. "The bearer of the final key." Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward, her hands resting on the console now. "It's me," she whispered. "I was born to complete this. My ancestors left me this responsibility." "You think you can unlock whatever secret this thing is hiding?" Marcus asked, a note of skepticism creeping into his voice. "What if you're just activating some kind of doomsday device?" Lyra's eyes softened, but her focus never wavered. "It's not about unlocking power, Marcus. It's about understanding what was lost, what my people were trying to protect. The Solarians were not just guardians of technology, they were stewards of knowledge. The power here isn't a weapon, it's the future. And what if the future is a total disaster?" Marcus replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "You've been a soldier too long," Lyra said with a smile, a brief flicker of humor in her eyes. "Always thinking of the worst case. Sometimes the future is the only way forward." As if on cue, the central console flashed, a surge of energy running through it. The room lit up with a brilliant white light, and Marcus instinctively shielded his eyes. When he lowered his arm, the hologram had shifted. The projection of the ancient queen now seemed to gaze directly at him, her expression filled with an unspoken understanding. "Your journey was never just about finding me," the hologram said. "It was always about finding yourself." Marcus stared at the projection, feeling a strange knot twist in his stomach. "I don't understand." Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You weren't just sent here to find me. You were sent to change the course of everything. This mission, this galaxy, it's all connected." The walls around them began to hum again, and Marcus could feel a strange pull in the air, as if the entire ruin was alive, breathing with them. The last few moments felt surreal. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Hyrex swore under his breath. "Well, I don't know about you two, but I'm about to get very annoyed if we don't figure this out soon. Time is running out." The timer on Marcus's wristpad was down to a few seconds. He could feel the tension building in the room, the moment of truth approaching. It was almost like the universe had suddenly become aware of their actions, like they were standing at the edge of something too powerful to comprehend. Lyra's fingers pressed the final sequence of codes into the console. The hologram of the queen smiled, her eyes now soft and filled with a quiet sense of peace. "You did it," she said simply. "The path forward is yours." The energy in the room shifted, and Marcus could feel it. Whatever had been unlocked was not some kind of ancient weapon, but a map, a network of knowledge and understanding far beyond the current galactic civilizations. It wasn't a weapon. It was an opportunity. The Solarians had protected this knowledge for a reason. It was something that could change the way they understood the universe, something that could connect civilizations in ways they had never imagined. As the light from the console began to fade, Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the weight of everything that had just happened. "We've done it," she said softly, "but now the real work begins." Marcus, for the first time since he'd landed on this strange world, found himself believing in the impossible. The ruins, the prophecy, the journey. He had been part of something that was more than just a mission. He had uncovered something that could change the course of history. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a small cog in a machine. He felt like he was part of something much bigger. Hyrex patted him on the back, breaking his reverie. "So now what? We just go back and tell everyone we saved the galaxy?" Lyra chuckled, the sound light and genuine. "Not quite. We have to make sure the knowledge we uncovered doesn't fall into the wrong hands." "Right. Because saving the galaxy sounds better with a little more risk," Marcus replied, his voice dry. "But now," Lyra said, her tone more serious, "we can finally take control of our destiny." Marcus looked at her, and for a moment he saw the weight of everything she had been carrying. The royal bloodline, the responsibility, the pain of being disconnected from her people. He realized that their journey wasn't just about finding the princess, it was about finding themselves, both of them. With a wry smile, Marcus nodded. "Well, if this whole saving the galaxy thing gets old, I hear there's always room for more soldiers in the Queen's army." Lyra smiled back, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I think we're past that, Marcus. We have our own path now." As they left the ruins behind, the weight of their discovery settled in, a future that was no longer uncertain, but full of possibilities. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel like a soldier just following orders. He felt like someone who had been part of something monumental, something that had changed everything. And whatever came next, he would face it head on.